What's up, everybody? Welcome on in to the Sports Forum podcast. I'm Riggs Tamburo. That's Anthony Hirsch and Bryson Owens. We got a fun one for you guys today. We finished up the National League. We are looking at the American League, and today we are on the American League Central. The Twins, Guardians, Tigers, White Sox, and the Kansas City Royals. Our man Bryson Owens on sportsforumdenver.com. You guys can find his article for the preview, so you guys can dive a lot deeper than we're going to dive here, but we are going to discuss each team, their win total, their pitching staff, hitting staff, our favorite things about the teams, who's going to fall off, who you should watch out for. So, gentlemen, let's jump in here and have some fun. Bryson, first team, man, that you mentioned is the team that won the division last year, the Minnesota Twins, 87-75 overall, 7-3 in their last 10, 47-34 at home, and 40-41 there on the road. Looking at this baseball team, man, just looking at last season and this season before we dive too deep in here, how you feeling about this team? Could they take a step forward here?
Yeah, this was a very fascinating team. Last season, they kind of flew under the radar, as they should have. They had the least amount of wins for a division winner last year. So no one really took them seriously because this wasn't the most deep, competitive division in the grand scheme of the MLB. From spots like 2 and 3, they were pretty competitive. 3, 4, and 5, they were competitive in the division itself. But like in the entire world of the MLB, it was not a very competitive division. But then they came out and beat the Toronto Blue Jays, who everyone loves last season. They beat them in the playoffs. So they proved that they can hang with some of the better teams in the league. They just were missing a couple spots here and there that put them over the top and get to a 90-win baseball team. Part of that was in their bullpen. They didn't have a great bullpen last year. They were kind of inconsistent on offense. To their credit, they have one of the best starting rotations from last season in the entire MLB. They were in the top 10 in total team ERA. They led the entire MLB in quality starts. That starting rotation, stellar. They didn't make too many big moves. They got Anthony Desclafini from the Giants, who is projected as of right now to slide into that bullpen. I think he is going to help that bullpen out a lot. This is a bullpen that didn't have a lot of saves or holds last season, so no major moves by them. They have a couple young guys that they're really hoping take the next step up, and they need Byron Buxton and Carlos Correa to turn it around. They had down years a year ago. But overall, this is a good team. I don't know if they're going to be world beaters. I don't know how competitive they're going to be when it comes to playoff time, but they're going to end somewhere in the 80-ish, 80 high to mid 80 kind of win mark and be just a solid team this season again, I think.
I like that, man. And I mean, Anthony, you look here at this pitching staff, dude, gotta be one of my favorite pitching staffs in the entire MLB, especially when you look at the top two guys here. I know it's kind of a slept-on room once you get to the third. Bailey Ober, a better pitcher than people give him credit for. Chris Paddock, Louis Varland, but most importantly, our boy Pablo Lopez is on top here. Love this dude. He has made us a heck of a lot of money over here at the Sports Forum, and I'm sure he's going to again this year. And then a guy like Joe Ryan, projected to be number 2 here in the slate, 4.0 ERA, give or take. I think he's a little bit better than that. I think he's in that 3.8 range. But Anthony, overall, man, looking at the pitching staffs here, how you feeling about these guys?
I think they're going to be pretty good. I don't think they're going to be the same quality that they were last season. I mean, I look at the 2 top guys from last year, Sonny Gray and Kenta Maeda. Both of those guys are out of here. Those are your 2 top starters right there. That's really tough. I mean, if it's like a 3 or 5 starter, yes, that's something that a team, even if you go to your farm system, you get a couple prospects that you think can slide into, a 4 or 5 spot in the rotation. It's a little bit different when you're asking, your 1 and 2 guys that are moving away. You have to get a new ace. You have to get a new number 2 guy. While I do think that the names that you mentioned here, Riggs, like Pablo Lopez, this guy is heavily slept on. I do think he's going to have an even better year than last year. I do think it gets a little bit, leaner as you get, through like 2 through 5 right there. I'm a little bit concerned about that pitching staff, especially like Bryson is saying right here, that their bullpen wasn't great last year. So they do need to have longevity out of their starters. Their starters have to be getting, 6, 7 innings under their belt, because they don't have 4 to 5 guys that they can go to get you to the end of the game right there. Outside the pitching staff, though, I think that this team has a lot of offensive firepower if they can stay healthy. That's the key right there, if they can stay healthy. Byron Buxton has faced injury, all the issues his entire MLB career. We'll see if he can stay on the field this year, but it's just tough for me to say, I think he will, when I've seen major injuries coming from this guy almost every season in the big leagues. Another key for them is going to be Royce Lewis. I mean, when this dude was in last year, he was on fire. He won one of the hottest streaks of any MLB hitter last season. again, he has to stay healthy. He only played 48 games last year. He's a little bit of a younger guy, still trying to get ABs under his belt. But this team overall has to stay healthy if they want to be right back here. Riggs, I want to ask you, man, with the pitching staff, the hitters, some of these departing names, do you see this team being right there at the top, or do you maybe see this team taking a step down from last year?
Man, I'll tell you right now, I'm a fan of this baseball team, and I think it's kind of because they're a slept-on baseball team. But you make some really good points here. They did lose two big dogs in the pitching department. Scares me a little bit. Bryce had mentioned they had a few hitters struggling last year. Correa is one of those guys. If he's off, you're in trouble. He is a centerpiece to the lineup. He's got to be on here. So I like this baseball team. I know they won 87 games last year, man, but I'm stuck here on this win total specifically because while I think they're a good team, are they an 87-win baseball team again? Are they the same team or better or not here? And I know we haven't talked about the rest of the division yet, so it's kind of hard to call this one off the rip here. But, Bryson, I want to start with you, man, before I jump in and give my win total because, you wrote this article. You technically have looked at this team more than anybody else. 86.5. Is it too high for you, or are you going to say this team can repeat?
I think this team can repeat. I said in the article, I think they're going to be somewhere around a 90-ish win team this year. I think they're slightly better. I know losing the pitchers like Anthony mentioned is a little bit concerning. I think the offense gets better this year. They had the most strikeouts in the MLB last season. I think they'll improve on that. They were below league average in batting average. I think they'll get higher on that. They hit a lot of home runs. I think Carlos Correa and Byron Buxton specifically will have better seasons. They have a couple young guys they're really hoping take the next step up. Most notably, Edouard Julian, their second baseman. He's going to be their leadoff hitter. He had a stellar rookie year. I think he's going to continue to improve. I think this pitching staff is still pretty good. I think it's going to be one of the better ones in this division specifically. So it's risky. I don't think they're going to be like world beaters, but I think they're going to be somewhere around 88 to 89 wins.
Boom. Anthony, that's one over. Are you jumping on the train?
I just can't do it. I'm going to be taking the under here. It's really tough for me when you put so much of faith, of your team. Like they're putting all their eggs in the basket in Carlos Correa and Byron Buxton right here. Carlos Correa, ever since he left Houston, has just not been the same player. Like I hate to say it, just hasn't been the same guy. He hit 260 last year, only hit 13 home runs. This is a guy where you're used to hitting 300, but hitting about 25 to 30 out. He just hasn't been there since he's come to Minnesota. And like I've said, with the injury concerns from Buxton, it's just really tough for me when those two guys have to perform for them to get to that same mark. If one of those guys either underperforms or goes on the IL for an extended stint, I just don't see it happening. I'm going to be taking the under here. I also see a couple of other teams in this division making some moves here. But I'll get into that a little bit. Riggs, where are you seeing the win total right here?
Oh, man, I want the Minnesota Twins to be good. Here's the thing, though. They don't have to win 87 games to win the division. So even if I believe that they're going to do that, they won 87 last year. The Tigers came in second with 78 wins. I think this baseball team can win 85 games and win this division. So I'm going to say under, but with that said, it's going to be very, very close. They are low 80s, probably at the worst. But I think their ceiling is about 88. And so I can't quite get there. I think they're an 84, 85 win baseball team. I'm going to ride with the under here. I don't love it, but they are absolutely, Bryson said specifically, they are a team that's going to fly under the radar. I completely agree with that. I think they are. The problem is, I think last year, they really flew under the radar, and a lot of teams slept on them. If you look at a lot of their games, they were beating teams on the road that they shouldn't have beat sometimes. I just don't know if they can do it as many times this year, now that people kind of know this might be a team to worry about. And like I said, my boy Pablo freaking Lopez, if he's on the mound, I'm taking the Twins. It's simple as that. So really looking forward to this baseball team, man. Should be a lot of fun. But let's jump on over, guys. Look at another team here. Like I mentioned, the team that came in second place, 78 and 84 overall, the Detroit Tigers, 7-3 in their last 10, 37 and 44 at home. And the only team with a positive road record in the division, 41 and 40. It was close, but they got there. They are positive. Bryson, looking at this team, man, can you give us a general overview here from 2023 to 2024?
Yeah, I kind of liked the Detroit Tigers. I know that's a kind of hot take for a lot of teams. For a lot of teams this year, I kind of like the Detroit Tigers. You mentioned it, Riggs. They had a winning record on the road. They finished last season on an incredible hot streak to get to second place in the division. They went 31 and 25 over the last 2 months. This is a young team too, one of the youngest in baseball. So to see those young guys have a really good end to last season heading into this offseason was huge for them. They have a lot of areas they need to improve, but a lot of that comes with youth. They were one of the worst offenses in baseball. They were 25th in home runs, 9th most strikeouts, 27th in batting average. Like, this is a bad offense. But they've got plenty of young guys to look forward to. Spencer Torkelson is one of the best first basemen in baseball, in my opinion, and he's still young. He's still improving. He's getting better every season. Last year, 31 home runs and 94 RBIs. His batting average needs to improve. It's at 233, and he had 171 strikeouts. So those are areas where he can improve. But then they have young guys like Riley Green in the outfield. They have a lot of young people I really enjoy on this team. They have a pitcher who I love, Tariq Skubal, who was incredible as a 26-year-old for them. But then most notably, I think what I like about this team, this is another smart team who knew that they were okay in the pitching department. They were about league average or below league average in a lot of spots. So what they did, they went out and got a ton of pitchers. They went out and got Kenta Maeda. They went and got Jack Flaherty, Andrew Chafin, and Shelby Miller. These aren't going to be, wow names. These aren't going to make you all of a sudden think they have the best pitching staff in baseball. These are plenty of good pitchers who can improve upon an average pitching staff for this team last season. So I really like Detroit. I don't know how good they'll be because they're so young, but I think they've made a lot of good moves to improve from their pretty surprisingly solid season last year. What do you think, Anthony? What are your opinions on the Detroit Tigers?
Bryson, I'm so happy you're right there because I'm right there in that same mindset. Right, like you look at some of these younger guys.
Oh man,
here I don't know if Torkelson is quite the best first baseman in the league yet, but he's right there. Like he totally has the makings of a righty Matt Olson, like a righty Freddie Freeman. The way that he approaches the game. Obviously, strikeouts do have to come out, but the power is very much there, and he's just been one of these highly touted prospects, probably the most highly touted prospect in the past 10 years in Major League Baseball. So to see him perform is a really promising sign for this Detroit team. Riley Green, too, hit 288 last year. Some of the power numbers need to come up, but when this dude is on, he's another top prospect. I mean, it's really crazy. All those years of mediocrity from this Detroit team, they really, really stockpile the farm system. And now we're finally starting to see these guys make their appearances in Major League Baseball. And they're good. They're all really good. Parker Meadows right there, too. We didn't see as much from him last year, but the 24-year-old is legit. This dude, I think, can be an absolute phenom for them. But one concern for this team, and I think the one thing that they failed to kind of figure out in their own right, it's a tough situation to kind of handle, is this Javier Baez situation. Like, what do you do with them? You have him into a massive contract, and the dude just cannot hit. He cannot hit. And it's not just not hitting. It's the fact that he looks absent-minded, like deer in the headlights out there half of the games he plays. If they're able to fix that, I think I have faith in the pitching staff. The moves that Bryson's mentioning, plus just, some of the guys that they've been developing. Casey Mize, he missed all of last year with an arm injury. He is another top prospect, top pitching prospect. He's probably going to slide in as the fifth starter. There's just so much to be excited about for this Detroit team. I think these guys have a chance to make the playoffs for the first time since 2014. Riggs, where are you looking for this team? Do you think they could be as Bryson and I are saying, or do you think they kind of stay around that 78 win mark?
Man, I'll tell you what, I think, Bryson, one thing that you mentioned, man, and it's sticking with me, and I agree with you, and I was hot on this team at the end of last year, is that 31-25 record there towards the end. They made that push, and it showed you mentioned that they're young. They're starting to play like a baseball team, and I think, like, over the last season and a half prior to that, they just seemed so discombobulated. They weren't a team. They didn't play like a team. They let so many late wins go out of their way. Last season, how many times did we see the Detroit Tigers win in the ninth inning? I mean, it happened countless times where they were down one and they had home runs, or they load the bases, and you're like, wait a minute, like, why do y'all only play good in the eighth and the ninth inning? Like, I don't understand. But they did. And now you guys mentioned, man, this pitching staff is an absolute problem. And that boy Skubal, one of my favorite pitchers. We're talking about underrated. We were talking about the Twins. This is an under the radar, underrated type of pitcher. They project him right now 9-9 overall, 3.49 ERA. I disagree. I think this guy's up for a Cy Young this year, no matter what. I like him at a 3.25. I think he's in the twos for the majority of the year, and eventually he's going to get blown up. It's going to happen. It happens to everybody. But overall, I think he's going to be a very, very dominant pitcher for those of you that like betting on the first 5 innings and all that, this is the kind of guy you want to do that. Not the world's best bullpen. I can't lie. They scare me a little bit. They did get more depth, but overall, man, I just think you got a guy like Scooball in there. He can pitch 6 or 7. They have a pretty decent bullpen as long as their best 2 or 3 arms are available. So I think this is a very good team. And really, what I like about this team is the hitting department did get better, and it's going to have to get better again because it's still not good enough to really like the Twin. I don't know if it compares to the Twins right away, but overall, when I look at these guys, they win so many games 2-1, 2-0, 3-1, very low scoring, which now that you have some bats, I think if they can score 3 or more runs consistently, I think that they are looking very, very good for that win total towards the end of the year. So I'm really liking this team. But gentlemen, speaking of that win total at the end of the year, 80.5. They need 81 wins, 3 games better than last season. Anthony, you just hyped up how good this team's going to be. Is 81 wins in the realm for you?
Absolutely. Slam it home. I think this team has a legitimate shot to win the division and make a playoff run this year. I just think that the extra year of experience for these younger core group of guys that they have is going to pay off paramount for this team moving forward in the season. I'm going to be slamming the over. I absolutely love it. I see this team. I think they have the potential to win somewhere in the high 80s range, maybe even get 89, maybe 90 if everything goes their way. But more realistically, probably 86 to 87 wins right here. Bryson, where do you see these guys finishing?
I really like the over 2. I'm not quite as confident as you are. I don't think they're anywhere close to an 89 plus win team right now. I think they're maybe a year away from doing that. I think they're about a year away from really pushing the Twins for the division title with how young they are. That's my biggest concern, just the youth of all their best players. I do think 81 wins is attainable for them. I think there's more than enough reason to think that they'll at least be above 500. I see them more in the realm of 82 to 83 wins. It's not going to wow anyone. No one's going to look at them and go, oh, 83 wins. The Detroit Tigers are one of the best teams in baseball. But you can see just the progression year after year of getting better. I think that's the biggest thing for the Tigers.
Man, oh man. All right. Well, 2 overs. Okay. Well, stay less than, gentlemen. Call it a squad ride for all I care. 81 wins. That feels like, I don't want to use the word easy money because winning 81 football games, Jesus, baseball games is not an easy task to handle. So, but I'm with you guys, man. You look at the pitching staff. I kind of teased it last time out. I tried to get someone to bite when I was talking about, is this the best pitching staff? Because to me, here it is. This is the best pitching staff of the division. I really like these guys. Now, the team coming up, they're pretty solid too, but I really like the Tigers here. And I just feel like overall, man, 81 wins is attainable, especially because I see this team contending for the division. If I took the under on the Minnesota Twins and I take the over here, it's pretty much saying I think it's wide open. So I'm going to go over. These guys both going to go over. So folks, we are saying 81 plus for the Detroit Tigers. Watch out. Sleepy team there, especially at home. Do not fade the Detroit Tigers if any of their big 3 arms are on the mound here. But gentlemen, let's jump on over to the Cleveland Guardians. This baseball team last year finished 3rd overall, 76 and 86 in the division. They were 4-6 in their last 10, so not a great ending there. 42 and 39 at home, struggled on the road though, 34 and 47. Bryson, when you take a whole look at this baseball team last year, did they kind of max out or did they fall short of expectations?
I think they more or less maxed out. And I think a lot of that, we just talked about the youth of the Detroit Tigers. You talk about a young team. This is a young team with the Cleveland Guardians. Yeah. I mentioned they have 1 player in their starting lineup, projected starting lineup, 30 years or older with all-star Jose Ramirez. They have 5 guys who are 25 years or younger. And in the starting rotation, only 1 guy who's over 30 with Carlos Carrasco. The rest of the guys are all under 30. So this is a really young baseball team. To their credit, despite their age, you mentioned, Riggs, you think the Detroit Tigers have the chance to be the best pitching staff in this division. I think this is easily the best pitching staff in this division. Right. This rotation is filthy. They have the top 2 guys, potential to be maybe the 2 best 1-2 punches in a rotation in baseball with Shane Bieber and Tanner Beebe. Their numbers last year were incredible. Shane Bieber had a down year last year and still threw a 3.8 ERA. That's scary. That's scary for the rest of the league. Tanner Beebe at 24 years old, 10-4 with a 2.98 ERA as a rookie. That's incredible. This was one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. They were top 10 in team ERA, top 10 in saves, holds, quality starts, the whole thing. My biggest concern with this team is just the age. I think they are very young, and you're asking a lot of these young guys to carry a team through an entire season, especially on offense. There's a lot of young bats that need to step up and continue to improve on this lineup. But overall, the pitching staff for this Guardians team, that's why I love them so much. I think they have the potential to be one of the best staffs in all of baseball. What do you think, Anthony?
I just don't see it quite honestly. I see guys that are plagued by injuries like Shane Bieber. If you look just at his performance since that Cy Young award, he's been kind of a shell of his former self. Like he's not been able to stay healthy. And even times when he's in, it's inflated numbers, even a 3.8 ERA. Like this is a guy that's been pitching to a sub-3 ERA before. I get the fact that pitcher ERAs are up, across the league right here, 6-6, 3.8 ERA. That's still not going to cut it for a guy who is, a former Cy Young candidate. That's not top of the rotation stuff. BB, I will give you your credit there. He is a fantastic pitcher. My one concern with him, if you look across the board, sophomore pitchers in this league struggle because hitters will figure them out after their first year. It's kind of the same with hitters. You figure when you struggle a little bit after you get that first year and everyone sees you're not the hot commodity anymore. They're going to be able to figure out. Honestly, my main concern, though, not so much the age, honestly, because I take a look 2 years removed, and this team was battling out with the Yankees in an ALDS series with similar guys who you can make the argument were just a year younger. I do think they're giving more opportunity to some younger guys like Bo Naylor, someone who's been in the works for them for a long time, finally starting to get some opportunities there. But if you look outside of the big names like Josh Naylor, Bo Naylor's brother, and Jose Ramirez, this team just does not have pop. They cannot get the ball out of the ballpark. And in today's MLB, that's really tough to win games. I will give them their credit. They're probably one of the better small ball clubs in all of baseball, as we saw in that postseason series 2 years ago. I mean, these guys can bunt, steal bases, probably amongst the best of the league. But in a league that's dominated by power bats and home runs, they fall a little bit short right here. While I do think that they have some room to improve in a couple of areas, I'm not sold on this team, but I do think that Stephen Vogt coming in, the 39-year-old all-star catcher, no manager experience. I think he's going to fit better with this younger group of guys rather than Terry Francona, older guy, great manager in his own right. But I just think that Stephen Vogt is going to be a little bit more relatable with this group of players. But I'm just not sold on this team quite yet. Bryson, do you have any response to that?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you real quick on the offense. Their offense does kind of scare me. That's why I think part of that is age. They're so young. The pop just isn't there, like you mentioned. They were last in baseball in home runs by 27 home runs. They had 124. Second to last was the Nationals at 151. So they clearly do not have the power like you're talking about. I personally am not as concerned about Shane Bieber like you are. Yes, he had an injured season last year, but 2022, the dude had he had a sub-3 ERA. In 2022, he had a 2.88 ERA. He threw 31 games, threw 200 innings. He was 13-8. That was just 2 years ago. I don't think he's got too much of a history of injuries. I think there's more than enough reason to believe that Shane Bieber can bounce back and continue to be the ace of this starting rotation. But I get your concerns with the injury history and just with the lack of power in that offense. So I agree with you. The offense is the biggest concern to me with this team. What do you think, Riggs?
Woo! I think you boys are both onto something here, man. I think I think you're both right in different areas here because I do agree with you. It is a young team and they should have made more moves. And I'm looking through your article here, man. And like you're mentioning a lot of things that I'm like, well, you should have done that. You probably should have done that. Well, why didn't they do that? And it's kind of like, are they satisfied with being a developing team? That's what scares me here is it's almost like if they end up sucking, right? It's kind of going to be like, oh, well, we're a young team. We're building. It is what it is. And I don't really like that when you're talking about the first two teams we talked about, the Twins and the Tigers. I think they're coming to win this whole damn thing, and there's no other option here. So that's my only fear with this team is that they are too young, and I think they had a couple opportunities to make moves that they didn't make. And I don't know if it's because they're being cheap, if they trust the young guys. I don't know. This photo is a great photo if you're watching and you're not listening on Spotify because it's a team photo. It's three dudes celebrating together. This is what the team kind of started to mesh into towards the end of the year. And I think if they can build off of that, they're going to be okay here. With that said, you guys are talking about these pitching staffs and everything like that. Shane Bieber, he's the question mark, because if he's
Mhm.
Shane Bieber, Bryson, you're right. And if he's not Shane Bieber, Anthony, you're right. It's kind of one of those, like, if he throws a 4.0 ERA and he throws 9-9 on the year, 4.0 ERA, is that a good enough year for Bieber? I don't think it is. I think he has to be in the threes, low threes, to be honest with you. And I think, Bryson, you mentioned something. Not too long ago, this was one of the most feared pitchers in all of baseball. And so I think that he has the opportunity to be good, and I hope he's good because I love Shane Bieber. But at the same time, I'm a guy that I got to see it before I believe it, man. And so I want to see him bounce back and play well. With that said, looking at this win total, we don't get the opportunity to get to see him before we make a bet here. So 79.5. Bryson, looking at that number there, man, can this baseball team win 80 games on the dot or more?
I don't think so. I think I'm going to take the under on this one. It's not going to be huge. I see them as like a 74 win team. I just think we talked about the Detroit Tigers got better. We're going to get to them later. I think the Royals got a little bit better. That's going to make those games a little bit more competitive. They're going to lose more games to the Royals this season. And overall, just the age and I hate bringing up the age, but the age just scares me with this team over a full season. And then just with the lack of scary offense that Anthony mentioned, I don't see this team really competing for a full season. So I like the under for them.
Anthony, are you going to come in here and blow this whole thing up? Because you look like you are.
Dude, this was really tough for me because, like, I agree with everything that Bryson's saying, but I could also see them finishing third in the Central and getting to 80 wins. Like, if you look at the win totals across the board last year, they were all kind of bunched together between like 85 to 76 wins right there. So yes, it doesn't really, change how I view how their season's going to go. But 79 wins, man, they freaking nailed this number. I think I have to lean the under just because of some of the other talent in the division. But don't be shocked if this team ends up with 81, 82 wins, finishes at that 500 mark. But right now, lean in towards the under. Riggs, are you going to make it a squad ride right here, or are you going to blow it out of the water, make us look stupid right here?
Drop the bombs, boys. Boom. I'm blowing this thing out of the water, dog. I got to go over here because the fact that I'm going to jump on Team Bryson here in the sense of I think Shane Bieber is Shane Bieber again. He might not be the dude quite there, but if he is 90% of what he was 2 seasons back, he's going to be just fine. So I'm not too worried about them here. And I think, Anthony, you nailed it on the head. Every team here, all of the big three we just talked about are the three that are going to be competing to win this entire division. And the thing about the Guardians is, as soon as you sleep on this baseball team, they could win this whole damn thing. And if they can win the whole thing, I once again have to say they punch that ticket to the low 80s type of thing. Maybe a few things go their way. They get to 85. Like I mentioned before, I think you can win this division with 85 wins. It's going to be like 85, 82, 81. It's going to be like right there. And then 76 and maybe 70 or something like that. That's how it's going to be ranked here. So I have to go over just for the sake of, I think these three teams are competing. If it was 82.5, I would probably say under, if that, makes anybody feel any better. So I'm right there, but I do think 80 on the dot, 81 likely is kind of where I'm looking at. But if they get 78, 79, won't be shocked. And if they do 82, 83, won't be shocked either. So right there, guys, Anthony said it. They nailed this one. Probably the most exact win total that we've seen this entire time. So should be a lot of fun here. Gentlemen, let's jump on over, guys, to team number 4. And man, oh man, one of the toughest baseball teams to try to figure out when you're betting, because as soon as you fade this team, they win 10-1. Every other day you take them, they suck. I can't stand this baseball team. The Chicago White Sox, 61-101. Shout out to the Rockies. 3-7 in their last 10, 26 games back from first place, 31-50 at home, 30-51 on the road here. Bryson, looking at this team as a whole, man, 2023 to 2024, can they really take a step back from what happened last year?
So I don't know if you guys are going to agree with me on this. I said in the article, if there was an award for the least improved this offseason, it might be the Chicago White Sox. I was not a fan of this offseason for them. It's so after a 61-101 record season a year ago, they lost more significant players than they gained this offseason. You look at the players they lost: Dylan Cease, Tim Anderson, Mike Clevenger, Liam Hendricks, and Yasmani Grandal. Those are all really good players. They may not be like all-stars anymore. Dylan Cease is probably the best player on that list still. And these are just guys who they just let go, and they didn't really replace them with anything great. Their biggest moves to replace these guys were getting pitcher Mike Soroka and shortstop Paul DeJong, who Soroka at one point in his career looked like a really promising young pitcher. We talked about injuries with Shane Bieber. Soroka's been dealing with injuries ever since he had his really solid, I think it was like his second year in the MLB. And Paul DeJong, he's same thing. He had a really good 2019 season, looked like the future shortstop, Hall of Famer for the Cardinals, and it just hasn't been the same since 2019. So they're asking these two guys who aren't old, they're still both under 30 years old. They're asking these guys to turn their careers around with this weird mix of young guys that they have on the roster. I'm not a big fan of them. I do like that they are kind of like the Guardians going more into a youth movement. They do have some players I really like, most notably their outfielders, Luis Robert Jr. and Eloy Jimenez. I like them a lot. They do have a pitcher I really like with Garrett Crochet at 24 years old. This team is really hard to read because I don't think they got better. It's hard to see them be worse than 61 wins. But
very hard.
This is a really weird team for me to judge at this point in the season. It's going to be really weird to see them play with all these young players. What do you think, Anthony? What's your read on this Chicago White Sox heading into the season?
This is the one term I've been using for the Chicago White Sox offseason. It's
Trash?
addition by subtraction. If you look at some of the guys that they got rid of, I'm going to say Dylan Cease, Tim Anderson, and Yasmani Grandal right there. All three of those guys at one point were fantastic players, some of the best in their positions in the league. Ever since their tenure in Chicago, they've gotten a little bit worse. They've also been pretty toxic in the locker room. Like, we know all of the drama of Tim Anderson off the field. I think it very much impacted this team, especially when you bring in a guy like Tony La Russa, who has no business being a manager anymore. Like, absolutely, fantastic job. The dude should be in the Hall of Fame. He was well past his time of being, a manager. And I really think bringing him in at that point when they had so many young players, like you guys remember Juan Moncada, this dude was one of the top prospects in all of baseball. And then he, gets a little too flashy, bat flips it. The older manager doesn't like it. He's never recovered from that. And I still think they're trying to, it's a culture recovery from having Tony La Russa in there. I think this is just another year where you rid some of that old, toxicity from the locker room. You give the opportunity to some younger players. You kind of hand the team over to Luis Robert a little bit and saying, hey, man, you have been here for you're one of the longest tenured guys, at least in the batting order. You need to take this team. You've been the one guy who's been a positive influence for some of the younger guys coming in. Take the reins here. Kind of take these teams. Take some of these younger guys under your belt. I also think, picking up a guy like Martin Maldonado, he's going to work really well with the younger pitching staff. This is one of the most experienced catchers in all of baseball. He has, championships over there in Houston. In the experience that he's going to bring into the staff, well, it might not show up in terms of wins on paper. It's going to be paramount for these guys' career moving forward. If you ask me what I think their wins are going to be, I don't think it's going to be much. I don't think they're going to be having an impressive season. But I will say Chicago is taking steps in the right direction to rebuild this franchise and get the culture back in the right direction.
Fair, man. I'll tell you what. There's one batter on this baseball team that I want everybody to keep a real good eye on. And this boy, when I used to play MLB The Show, boy, this dude balled out in the video game. And last year, he started balling out in the real season, man. And that's Andrew Benintendi. I love this kid. He's a phenomenal player. They're projecting him .270 average, 10 home runs, 54 RBIs. I think he's better than 10 home runs here. I think 54 RBIs is ideal, but I actually see him in the 60s here. His average could be as good as 2.7, 0.275, 0.28. I really, really like this guy. Anthony's shaking his head saying higher. Exactly my point. I think this is a phenomenal dude, going to have a big year, bigger than people are thinking he's going to have. So maybe if you guys are looking at player props or something, if you don't want to take this team to win because you don't trust them, look at their hitting, look at some props. I think Andrew Benintendi is going to be phenomenal here. And then, looking at that pitching department, holy hell. Outside of Chris Flexen, who I used to love for the Seattle Mariners, the dude's kind of fallen off. He's in his Shane Bieber era, man. He's fallen off. Can he get back to being the guy he used to be? This dude used to throw dingers. The problem is he got figured out. Way too many balls hitting bats with this pitcher now. Chris Flexen, they got him in the 4 spot most likely. I don't really like that for him, if I'm being honest. I think he's a little bit better than that. But I can't hate on it. He has been struggling, so it is what it is. But Bryson, you nailed it, man. The least improved baseball team in this division, maybe in baseball. Yeah, I think you're onto something there. And then Bryson, you also mentioned in your article, man, that this is going to be one of those teams that kind of like the Cleveland Guardians. We look at them and think, oh, they're just going to be this young team. Maybe they're going to be promising. But you kind of mentioned that it's not the same type of promising that the Cleveland Guardians have. It's more of a, oh my God, what are we doing? Why are we not improving? Mm-hmm. This is a scary team that's in trouble. And I don't like it here. With that said, let's hop over to the win total, guys, because it's just a number that really, Anthony, they're not asking you for much here, man. 61 wins last year, 61.5. Are they good for one more win? And by the way, if they're not, how pathetic is that?
I don't think it's pathetic. You guys keep phrasing it like that, they didn't make any moves in the offseason. This is a team that's going towards a rebuild. That's their move. Yeah. That's where the Orioles, that's where a bunch of these great youth teams that we
can't rebuild backwards.
Teams in baseball. You have to start somewhere, Riggs, and this is where you start. It's getting rid of a bunch of these guys with these massive contracts, and it's suffering through letting some of these younger guys play. And this season, it's going to suck. It is going to suck for White Sox fans. The product on the field isn't going to be very good, but they are building towards something. This isn't just a give-up season. This isn't the Colorado Rockies right here. Let me make that straight.
They're worse than the Colorado Rockies.
They're not worse than the Rockies, Riggs.
They are worse than the Rockies.
They're not 100%. Worse than the Rockies. They're not worse than the Rockies.
At least, I'll let you finish.
Anyway, I don't see this team getting above that 60-win team. I do not see them going above that number, but they are rebuilding towards something, and this is the first step. Bryson, do you see this team sneaking past maybe 62 wins right here, or do you see them slipping below 61.5?
No, I kind of agree with you, Anthony. Yes, in the article I mentioned they're the least improved team in baseball because they didn't make any significant moves. But you're right. Their biggest move is they're going into a rebuilding phase, and sometimes with these rebuilding phases, you just have to start from ground zero and build your way up. Kind of like we were saying, Anthony, I think this is going to be a very long season for the Chicago White Sox. They're going to be lucky to get to 60 wins, in my opinion. I'm going to take the under on this one. They have too many areas where they were so bad last year, where they were bottom 5 in team ERA, bottom 5 in batting average, bottom 5 in homers. Like, this was just not a good team last year. And the move they made isn't going to make them better this next season, but it could improve them going forward, where in like 2 or 3 years, you can see the Chicago White Sox as a team competing for this division again.
Damn. Bryson, one more question for you. Is this team better than the Colorado Rockies?
They're not going to be better than the Rockies this season. I think the Rockies are going to finish with a better record, but I do think that they're in a better direction because they're fully embracing the rebuild, where the Rockies are always just kind of hovering that, are we rebuilding? Are we bringing in these veterans? What are we going to be next season? So I think that the White Sox are in a better direction than the Rockies are, but they're not going to be better than them this season.
Fair enough. 61.5, dude. I'm really struggling with this number because like they're literally saying, come on, man, can they win one more game? I don't know, man. Like I really don't know. And I want to say, yeah, duh. Like, of course they're gonna win one more game. But bruh, here's the thing. The Kansas City Royals on the flip side, who we're going to talk about in just a second, I don't think they can be any worse than they were last year. So if someone's going to improve of the two bad teams here, I kind of think it's Kansas City. Like I'm going under. I don't know. I just bashed this team. I guess I have to go. I can't bash them and go over. So give me the under here. 61.5 is too many. Can they win 60 games? Yes, they can. More ideally, I see them in the 58 win range. They're just not good. The pitching staff sucks. The bullpen sucks. The hitting order sucks. They're bad. And even though they're rebuilding, I don't give a damn. It's 2024. It ain't 2026 yet. So I'm going to say that this team is terrible this year. They're going to be, in my opinion, the worst team in the division. So let's jump on over here and get to our fifth and final team, guys. The Kansas City Royals, 56-106, 31 games behind, 6-4 in their last 10, 33-48 at home, and a pathetic 23-58 on the road. Bryson, you could argue that this was the literal worst team in baseball last year. How you feeling about the Royals? You see their stadium here in the background. It's kind of like the Rockies. Nice stadium, fun place to be, great fans, but they suck.
Yeah, the Royals are fascinating coming into the season because if I would have told you guys they finished with the second worst record in the MLB last season,
There you
but
go.
they made moves that like teams that want to compete this season make. That those two things don't add up. The Royals, when you look at them last season, they were far away from being a team ready to compete. But every move they made this offseason is a move that like teams who want to win the division make. Like they went out and got Micah Wacha and Seth Lugo to fix that rotation. Both guys coming off great stretches of their careers. Wacha's back-to-back sub 3.4 ERA seasons with a 25-6 record. Lugo, 3 straight sub 3.6 ERAs. So that's going to be much needed for the third worst team ERA in baseball and the third worst quality starts in baseball last season. So that they're going to improve there. They also brought in Chris Stratton and Will Smith to help the bullpen, which was also awful last season. But just there's so many things that the Royals need to improve on that a 56-win team shouldn't look to be ready to compete. It's kind of like the Rockies I was just talking about with them. They have all this mix of like, are we going to go into rebuild? Are we bringing in veterans to help us compete? And they're going to kind of fall into that no man's land of what are we this season and what are we going forward? They have some young guys I really like. Obviously, Bobby Witt Jr. is incredible. They have outfielder MJ Melendez, who's a very solid player for them in the outfield. So they have some young guys that I'm excited about, but they also brought in veterans like Hunter Renfroe and Garrett Hampson to kind of mix throughout that lineup. That just, it makes them kind of confusing. I think they're definitely going to be better than they were last year, but I don't know if these moves are going to be enough to put them in the same class as the Twins, as the Tigers, as even the Guardians. So they're in a weird no man's land for me with the Royals. What do you think, Anthony? Was this a confusing offseason for you too?
Like, I like these moves, in their own right. Like, I like these moves, but like you're saying, like the time that you bring in veteran guys with playoff experience is if you're in the boat of the Detroit Tigers, even the Guardians, obviously, looking at some of the top teams in other divisions, that's when you bring in veteran guys with postseason experience to help bolster those younger guys, give them that little bit of reassurance, and to give them that veteran presence. That ultimately, that's what you need to win to make a competitive team, kind of sprinkling that veteran presence through a lot of good youthful core. But like Bryson said, the Royals are nowhere near that point. It's like if the Rockies, it's like when the Rockies went out and got freaking Chris Bryant. Like, okay, you get this veteran experience in here, but like for what? But I will say the one difference between like the Rockies going out and signing like the one guy like Chris Bryant and what the Royals did this offseason, this was a roster overhaul, man. I mean, so many guys leaving, so many guys in. It's kind of hard in a lot of ways to see how these guys are going to mix together. In their own right, though, they need to fix their offense because outside of Bobby Witt Jr., I know it's crazy to think Salvador Perez is still there. Like, he's the one dude that stayed throughout all the championship year, is still just on the other side of it. But Salvador Perez, still has a little bit of pop in his bat. But also, outside of those two guys, they have a really hard time driving in runs and hitting the ball out in the park. And I just don't really see how it's going to be much different this year. I will say, I think the pitching staff did get a lot better, and it is not the worst pitching staff in this division. I don't know. Overall, I think this team will be better, and I hope that maybe getting some of these veteran guys in will maybe help to alleviate the pressure for some of these younger guys, make it seem like not all the pressure on the world is on their shoulders, whether the team's going to be successful or not. That might help them a little bit. But overall, man, this team, big question mark over their heads entering the season. Riggs, do you feel confident one way about this team, or are you kind of right there in a similar boat with us?
I'm kind of with you guys, man. And Bryson, you mentioned it, man. You did a really good job in the article talking about all of the different improvements and what they mean for the team, like just the pitching staff and the bullpen alone. I love what you said about Cole Ragans here, man. I mean, you look at the dude. I know he's the number one dude. And am I the biggest Lugo, Singer, Wacha guy? I'm not. But once again, like, they're not a good team. So it's hard to be like, oh, well, their pitching staff struggles. They struggle everywhere. They were trash last year. Like, what do you expect? So it's really hard here, man. But I think what you mentioned that was really, really good is that I just feel like everything got better on this team. And we just talked about the White Sox. Everything got worse. I know that you guys want to say it's a rebuild. That's fine. But like, they are not trying to win. Every single team in this division outside of the White Sox wants to win right now. And what's crazy is, we're going to go over the win total in just a minute. It is absurd how high it is compared to what happened last year. So overall, guys, I'm with you. I think the hitting staff's better. The pitching staff's better. This bullpen has been atrocious for the last few years. They might almost be a little bit respectable this year. I don't think anything crazy out the gate, but Bryson, anything else here, man, on the Royals before we jump in here to a win total?
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on what Anthony was saying. He mentioned with the Detroit Tigers. Let's say, what would have happened if they went out and got Micah Wacha and or Seth Lugo and got one of these bullpen guys? If the Chicago or the Detroit Tigers went out and got one of these arms to bolster that pitching staff, we would have been talking to the Detroit Tigers as like almost the clear favorite to win this division. So that's what makes these moves kind of weird, is like a team like Detroit or even Cleveland getting one of these kind of arms kind of makes more sense than a team like Kansas City. But I do applaud Kansas City for at least going out, like Anthony was saying, not just getting one guy to hope to fix the franchise. They went out and got like 10 guys to help build up this young roster.
There you go, guys. Well, get ready, because this win total is going to blow you out of the damn water, and I'm shook. 56 wins last year, 74.5. Can this team win 75 baseball games, Bryson? You mentioned in your article they will be improved with all the veteran presence. Will they be damn near 20 games improved, though? It feels a little bit high, man.
It feels like a little bit high to me, too. I'm going to take the under here, and it's not a bad under. I think they just set this line a little too high for me, in my opinion. I think this is a 72-ish win team, 71 win team, slowly getting improved, getting the young guys more experience, and they're building towards something I think that's going to work in the future. But I just don't see them being almost 20 games better, like you mentioned, Riggs. What do you think?
Yeah.
No, there's no way. There's no way. Yeah, I think they really messed up with this line here. I think they're preying upon bettors. When you hear, especially a guy like Michael Wacha, you're like, oh, he's going to be over there in Kansas City. I'll slam that over. So I think it's, a lot of people that look at these moves but don't really dissect the team and see why they had to make those moves in the first place, and realizing that team is still there. But real quick, overall, we're like a bunch of weird moves coming from this division. There's a couple of teams that seemed like they had more money to spend, but they just didn't go out and spend it. Overall in this division, we're familiar with this with the Rockies. The TV deals across the AL Central have been crazy. Like, deals have been falling through. There's a fraction of the money coming in through television deals as there was last year, meaning that the part that affects teams is their payroll. So every team in this division has cut back on their payroll to adjust for this limited income coming in. So we look at some teams like the White Sox. It's, yes, the fact that they're rebuilding, but you also have this thing over you that you have a limited payroll. Just want to make everyone aware of that real quick. But Riggs, where do you see this team finishing? Do you think they can get 20 games better than they were last year?
20 games, bro? Like, dog. I was about to look at this thing and I was thinking, okay, 56, maybe it's like 65.5, maybe that 74 point. Like, I am just... what am I missing here? I mean, are they 10 games better? Sure. Are they 19 games better? Bro, how do you say over? Like, how do you, but they must know something, because we've been talking about all the win totals for the last 5 divisions. And here we are, man. And we've never seen a jump like this from season to season with, yes, they made some very important moves. Did they sign Shohei Ohtani? Did they do something crazy? No. So, I don't know. It's too high for me, man. Can they be a 70-win baseball team? I think it's a stretch. I think if they get to 68 or more, it was a successful season based on what happened last year. To me, the White Sox are the bottom team no matter what. And then really, even if these guys win 65 to 75, to me, they're in fourth. No matter what, they have to win. They have to hit the over here to even have a shot at getting third place. And I just don't think it's going to happen. So I'm going to say under here. Y'all want to go over, good luck, but I'm not going to sit at my house and go, there's 1 win, there's 2. I can't get to 75 with the Kansas City Royals. It's just not going to happen. So, gentlemen, with that said, let's jump on in here, guys, to before we wrap this thing up, to our division futures winners. So, once again, you got Royals, Guardians, White Sox, Twins, and Tigers. Looking at the odds here, Twins, the big favorite, the only team with a minus sign in front of their name. The Twins here, minus 115. Tigers at plus 350, Guardians also at plus 350. Kind of interesting there that they're the exact same odds. Kansas City Royals at plus 850. And finally, Anthony's Chicago White Sox there at 40-1.
Anthony, looking at White this win Sox, bro. Do not say my White Sox.
Hey, I had to give
I see the rebuilding, and Riggs over here is like, oh my God, Anthony loves the White Sox. Like, oh.
Hey, it's all love. It's all love. But anyway, looking at these odds, man, who is your division winner?
Anthony?
Man.
Hirsch, yeah.
Yeah, this is a tough one. So here's the thing for me. This division is way too wide open for there to be a clear favorite, to be a winner, like flat out. For the Twins to be a favorite in this division, like, I'm sorry. The Wings finished too closely last season. I'm just not sold on them completely to be a favorite in this division. Where I look at the Tigers right there, I see a plus 350 valuation. I think that should probably be about minus 300. There's no way you can tell me that they have the same odds to win the division as the Guardians. This is a better team than the Guardians. I think they're more poised this season to make a run at the division. This is my favorite division winner right here. I'm actually going to be placing this bet as soon as we get off of here because for the value and how wide open this division is, I really like the Tigers. So at least take a shot at them, especially given the value.
So I'm kind of right there with Anthony. I think the Twins should win this division. I think they are probably the best team in this division. I just don't love the value. I don't think there should be a team with a minus sign next to their name on these odds. I think it makes a lot of sense to take a shot on the Detroit Tigers because of everything we've talked about. They have a chance to win the division, and the value is there for Detroit. But I think the Twins do win the division. I just don't love the odds on them. I don't like the fact that I have to take a minus number on them when this division isn't as clear-cut as a lot of these other divisions that we've talked about.
As a fan or just as an analyst and not as a sports bettor, if it wasn't about the odds here, would you say Minnesota is going to win it all?
I would say Minnesota is going to win this division. I think that they are in a spot to win this division. The other teams just aren't quite yet. I think there's a couple teams that are 1 or 2 years away from really pushing the Twins for the division.
Anthony, if I asked you the same question, if you took the odds out of it and it was every single person was plus 100, would you still stick with your pick here?
Yeah, dude, I legitimately think they have a chance to make at least a push for it this season. I think the biggest thing for me where I'm saying the Twins are just not going to be as good as last year is the subtractions of Sonny Gray and Kenta Maeda. Like when you lose 2 top rotation guys, that's going to impact you in at least a couple of wins here and there. And while they might seem small, they might seem like nothing losses throughout the regular season. They build up towards the end of the season record, and I think that's going to be the case right here. While the Twins obviously have a shot at it, I really think that Detroit could make a run at it right here. Riggs, do you think they can? If we're going to take the odds out of this, do you think they can, or do you think this is going to be the Twins division for at least another year?
Y'all, you know what, man? I got to go with the Detroit Tigers. I don't care if it's plus 100. I don't care if it's minus 110, and I don't care if it's plus 350. But if you're going to give me that plus 350, I'm going to eat that for breakfast every single day. I don't understand how they're minus 115 here for the Minnesota Twins. Maybe if we were looking at, I don't know, plus 150 and plus 250, maybe you almost consider it. But seriously, I'm kind of with Anthony on the fact that I would not be shocked if Detroit was favored to win the division. So at plus 350, it's too good not to take it. And even if you took the odds out of it, which obviously they do matter, but if you take them out, I think I'd still stick with that. I think Skubal is going to be the number 1 pitcher in this division, even though I think Shane Bieber is going to bounce back here. I think that Skubal is going to be it. And I'm telling you right now, watch out for the Cy Young Award. I really, really believe that he's going to be in contention here with a few weeks left in baseball. Definitely a top 3 guy for the award. I feel really good about that, barring any injuries or anything like that. So, guys, any other thoughts here? Bryson, I know once again, your article is up on sportsforumdenver.com. So, folks, you guys can go check that out. It'll be up there the entire season. But looking overall, man, any last thoughts here?
Yeah, just don't sleep on this division. This was a division that was slept on last year, largely because it was just the Twins and then just a bunch of teams under 500. I think this is going to be a more competitive year this year. Like we mentioned, we think the Detroit Tigers have a real chance to push the Twins for the division. The Guardians, while they're young, and I think they're at least a couple years away, they should be at least a team to watch to be competitive throughout the entire year. The Royals should be better than they were last year. So don't sleep on this division again this year. I think there's a legit chance for a tight division race come the end of the season.
For sure. Anthony, anything else from you, man?
Dude, if the Tigers end up winning the division or at least getting into the playoffs, how poetic would that be? The fact that Miguel Cabrera last year in his last season for Detroit kind of like fostered this youth movement, said like, here, I'm going to take you guys to the promised land, kind of takes the team on his back, at least for his final season. While they might not have gotten there last year, that really did feel like the kind of spark of momentum that this team needed. And I really think it's going to pay off for them this year. While he might not be around for it, you have to believe he feels good about kind of fostering this change in Detroit for the amount of years that he spent there.
Definitely one of the most slept on divisions here, guys. I'm with on every single thing you guys are saying. I do think the Tigers go ahead and get this thing done, but we already mentioned it. The Twins and the Guardians are going to be, this is a 3-horse race here. Odds makers seem to think it's a 4-horse race because the Kansas City Royals exist all of a sudden. I can't go that far, but a 3-horse race, pretty obvious who's going to get 4th and who's going to get 5th, but those 3 teams are going to be fighting for it to the very end. Anthony, you kind of mentioned it. Will the Tigers make the playoffs? I'm going to be shook if they do not make the playoffs. Even if they get second, I still think it's going to be good enough to punch a ticket in and get there, and then the other team is going to be close. But should be a lot of fun, guys. Keep your eye out. One of the most slept-on divisions in all of baseball. Give these guys a follow. Bryson Owens at Bryson Owens 16, Anthony Hirsch there at Anthony Hirsch 23, and myself at Rig Sports Talk. This has been the MLB podcast, episode number 5. Looking at the AL Central, we got one more for you guys. Make sure you check them out on our YouTube at The Sports Forum. Click that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that like button. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you guys soon. Good luck.